everyone, this is Ms. Hazelson. Today we're going to be working on Unit 3 LT5 notes, factoring using the reverse box with a GCF, or with a greatest common factor. And the steps in order to do this using the reverse box is first you're going to factor out the greatest common factor. So that's a number and or a letter that will go into each part. And then you're going to set up and solve your X, fill in the box, pull out your greatest common factors, and then write out your factors. And this will make more sense once we put it into practice here. Okay, one very important thing to remember is that when you set up the X, you only set up the X for what's left after you factor out your GCF. Okay, so here we're going to start by factoring the trinomials. In order to do that, we're going to take our greatest common factor out. So first we look at the numbers. So I have a 2, a 6, and a 4. What will go into a 2, a 6, and a 4? What can I take out of all of them? Well, I see that they all have 2 in common. So I can take a 2 out of here, I can take a 2 out of the 6, and I can take a 2 out of the 4. Now I'm going to look, do they have any letters in common? So I have an x squared, an x, and then just a 4. Well, if only 2 of the numbers have a letter next to it and the third one doesn't, then they don't have anything in common. They all 3 have to have it in there, so they don't. So now I'm going to take that 2 and I'm going to put it on the outside. And now I'm going to factor out what's left. So 2 divided by 2 is 1, and I still have x squared, plus 6 divided by 2 is 3, and then I have an x, plus 4 divided by 2 is 2. Okay? Now the important piece to remember is that this is the piece that we're going to now factor. So now with that, we're going to figure out what our A, our B, and our C is. So my A equals 1 because it's with my x squared, my B equals 3, and my C is 2. So now that I have that, I'm going to multiply my A and my C, and that goes on top, and my B goes on bottom. And now when I'm thinking of my multiples of 2, I know it's only 1 and 2, and 1 and 2 does equal 3, so I'm going to have a 1 on this side and a 2 on this side. Okay, so now we're going to rewrite, and we have to rewrite using just this, and we're replacing this piece right here with these 2 right there. Okay, so I'm going to start with 1x squared plus 1x plus 2x, and then end with plus 2. Okay, I'm going to group my first 2 and group my second 2. 1x squared and 1x, they both have a 1x in common. And 2x and 2, they both have a 2 in common. So my 1x is going to come out front. And then I'm going to multiply 1x divided by 1x, or 1x squared divided by 1x. I still have a 1x left. And then 1x divided by 1x, I'm just left with 1. So 1x plus 1, plus my 2 comes out front. And then 2x divided by 2 leaves me with a 1x, and 2 divided by 2 is 1. Okay, I'm going to check and make sure, do my insides match? So I have 1x plus 1, 1x plus 1, sure do, so that looks good. So my first set is going to be 1x plus 1, and I'm going to multiply that by what I have on the outside. So I have a 1x plus 2. So I'm going to say 1x plus 2. And here's the really important piece. In the beginning, we factored out that 2. So see this 2 up here? That one we factored out. Well, if you went to the mall and your mom asked you to take your little sister to the mall with you, she would expect when you leave, you're going to leave with your little sister. So you took her with at the beginning. So now when you go home, you have to, absolutely have to bring her with you. So that 2 is going to come down here and just go right out front. So we factored her out right away, but we have to bring her home with us too. So there she is. And we're going to do the same thing with this next one. When we look, we have, first we're going to look at our numbers. What do they have in common? And then look at our letters and see, do they have anything in common? So when I'm looking, I have a 3, and an 18. Well, I know they are all divisible by 3. So let's start by dividing this one by 3, and divide this one by 3, and divide this one by 3. Okay, and now I'm looking at my letters. I have an x squared, an x, and then nothing. Because they don't have a letter in common, the only thing that we can divide out is that 3. So that 3 is going to come out front, and then we divide the rest of it out. 3 divided by 3 is 1, and I still have x squared plus 3x divided by 3 is going to give me 1x. And then because that's a negative 18, we're going to do negative right here. So 18 divided by 3 is 6. And then I'm going to close that up. Now when we factor, we're going to use this piece right here to set it up. But first we have to figure out what our A, our B, and our C is. So my A equals 1, my B equals 1, and my C equals negative 6. So now I have that set up. My top, my negative 6 times my 1. It's going to give me a negative 6. And my B is a 1 on the bottom. Okay, so now I'm thinking of all that goes into 6. So I know 1 times 6, and I know 2 times 3. Okay, because the negative 6 is a negative and the 1 is positive, that means that our lower number is going to be the negative. So I could put a negative here and a negative here. So negative 1 plus 6 will give me a 5, and negative 2 plus 3 will give me that positive 1. So these are the ones that I'm going to use. So I'm going to have a negative 2 and a 3 on each side. I'm going to take and rewrite what I have in green here, but I'm replacing this 1x with that negative 2 and that 3. So I'm going to say 1x squared minus 2x plus 3x minus 6. I'm going to chunk my first 2 and chunk my second 2. 1x squared and 2x, they both have a 1x in common. So I'm going to take a 1x out of both of them. And 3 and 6, they both have a 3 in common. Okay, so 1x squared divided by 1x. So I'm going to take my 1x and stick it out front. 1x squared divided by 1x, I'm left with a 1x. And negative 2 divided by 1 is going to give me a negative 2. And those x divided by x, those cancel each other out. So they're gone. I'm going to close that. Plus 3 goes on the outside. 3x divided by 3 will give me a 1x. And negative 6 divided by 3 is going to give me a negative 2. Now I'm going to check. Do I have 1x minus 2 and 1x minus 2? Yep. So I know my first set of parentheses is going to be 1x minus 2. And my second set is going to be what's left. So I have 1x plus 3. Now we have to go back up and see, did we take our little sister to the mall with us? Well, yes, she did come to the mall. So because she came to the mall, she has to come home with us, or your mom is not going to be happy at all. So we're going to bring her down and just stick her out front right there. And this should have a parenthesis down there. Okay, looking at number 3. So first I'm going to look and find the greatest common factor between my 2, my 7, and my 3. Well, the only number that can be pulled out of a 2, a 7, and a 3 is a 1. So I'm going to take a 1 out of each one of those. And now I'm going to look. What can I take out? Do I have any letters that are the same? Well, I have x to the third, x to the second, and just an x. Remember, you're going to take your smallest exponent as your greatest common factor. And my smallest exponent would be just that x. So I'm going to take an x out here, an x out here, and an x out here. Okay, now I'm going to take that 1x and stick it out front and then start my parentheses. So 2x to the third divided by 1x. So 2 divided by 1 is 2. X to the third divided by x is x to the second. Plus 7 divided by 1 is 7. And x to the second divided by x to the first is just an x. Plus 3 divided by 1 is 3. And then x divided by x, those cancel out. So I'm just going to close that right there. So now I'm going to take what's inside here and I'm going to rewrite my x, or set up my x with just that. So my x goes here and my a is a 2, my b is a 7, and my c is a 3. Okay, so I'm going to take my a times my c, so I have a 6, and my b goes on the bottom. And if we find our factors of 6, I know 1 times 6 and 2 times 3. Well, there's only one of those that if we added together would equal 7. So I have a 1 here and a 6 here. Now I'm replacing this piece right here with these two right there. Okay, so we're going to take what we pulled out. So now I have 2x plus 1x plus 6x plus 3. I'm going to chunk my first 2, chunk my second 2. What's in common between 2x squared and 1x? Well, I can take a 1x out of that, and I can take a 1x out of here. A 6x and a 3, they both have a 3 in common. My 1x comes out front, and I divide out. 2 divided by 1 is 2, x squared divided by x is x, plus 1 divided by 1 is 1, and my x's cancel out, plus 3, because I divided by 3 on that side. 6 divided by 3 is 2, and I have an x left over, and 3 divided by 3 is 1. Checking to make sure my insides match. 2x plus 1, 2x plus 1. Those look good. So my first set of parentheses is going to be 2x plus 1. My second set comes from what's on the outside, 1x plus 3. So my second set's going to be 1x plus 3. Okay, but I'm not done. I'm going to double check. Did I take my little sister with me? Is there anything out front first? Well, yes, I have a 1x out front. So now I have to represent that. I have to bring her back home with me. So I'm going to stick that 1x right there. So that will be your final answer. Okay, looking at number 4, I have x to the third. I have a 6x squared and an 8. Well, I see that an 8x. I see that they all three have an x in them. So I'm going to take an x out of here, an x out of here, and an x out of here. So my x is going to come out front. X to the third divided by x is x squared. 6x squared divided by x is going to give me a 6, just a 6x. And then 8x divided by x, that's just going to give me a plus 8. Those x's cancel out. Now that I have that, I'm taking my new, what's inside here, and I'm going to factor that. Okay, first I'm going to find my a, my b, and my c. So my a equals 1, my b equals 6, and my c equals 8. Set up my x. 8 times 1 is 8. And my b is a 6. So I'm finding all my factors of 8. 1 times 8, 2 times 4, and that's it. I see 2 and 4 add up to 6, so I'm going to put those right there. Now I'm going to rewrite, replace this with those two. So I have x squared plus 2x plus 4x and end with plus 8. Chunk those two and those two. X squared and 2x, they both have an x in common. And 4x and 8, they both have a 4 in common. X comes out front. X squared divided by x is just an x. And 2x divided by x leaves me with a 2 plus 4 on the outside. 4x divided by 4 gives me just an x. You can put the 1 in front of that x if you'd like. You don't have to. And then 8 divided by 4 is plus 2. When we look, we have x plus 2, x plus 2. That looks good. So my first set of parentheses is going to be x plus 2. And then my second set of parentheses is going to be this and this. So x plus 4. Okay, now I have to double check. Do I have anything that I brought to the mall with me or anyone? Yep, that little sister did come with us, gosh darn it. So she needs to come home with us too. So she's got to come out front. So this will be your final answer. Okay, we're going to start with this one by finding the greatest common factor between the numbers. I have a 6, a 14, and a 4. Well, they're all even numbers, and the biggest even number that I can take out of that is a 2. So I'm going to divide each one of those by 2. So 6 divided by 2, 14 divided by 2, and 4 divided by 2. I'm going to look and see, is there a letter that's in common? Nope, they don't have a letter in common. So my 2 is going to come on the outside, and then I'm going to divide out what's left. So 6 divided by 2 is 3. And I still have x squared, plus 14 divided by 2 is 7, and I still have an x, plus 4 divided by 2 is 2. I'm going to take this, and I'm going to factor that. First, I need to find my a, my b, and my c. So my a equals 3, my b equals 7, and my c equals 2. 2 times 3 is 6. And my b, my bottom, is 7. My factors are 6, 1 and 6, 2 and 3. Well, only 1 and 6 will add up to 7. So I'm going to have a 1 here and a 6 here. Now I'm going to replace this 7 with that 1x and 6x. So I'm going to start with my 3x squared. Plus 1x plus 6x plus 2. Chunk those two and those two. 3x squared divided by 3x squared plus 1x. They both have an x in them. And 6x plus 2. They both have a 2 in them. Okay, so 3x squared divided by x. Put my x out front. I still have a 3 and an x. And then 1x divided by x. I still have a 1 left. Plus 2 on the outside. 6 divided by 2 is 3x. And then 2 divided by 2 is 1. I'll double check. How do they look on the inside? Looks perfect. So my first is 3x plus 1. My second is x plus 2. X plus 2. And I'm not done until I check up above. Did I bring anybody with me? Yep, brought that 2. So that 2 is going to have to come down out front. And that's going to be your final answer. Okay, next one I have x squared plus 12x plus 20. So when I'm thinking of a letter, or sorry, not a letter, a number, so there's a 1 in front of that x squared. So I have a 1, a 12, and a 20. Well, the only thing that will go into all of those would be a 1. And we don't really have to take a 1 out because you end up, if you divide by a 1, you end up getting the exact same number. Like 12 divided by 1 is 12, and 20 divided by 1 is 20. So those wouldn't change at all. So let's look at the letters. I have x squared plus 12x and then plus 20. So I only have an x squared and an x, but my 20 doesn't have anything on it. So this one, you cannot take a greatest common factor out at all. So when you can't take greatest common factor, you just go right into factoring. So first you're going to find your a. So my a equals 1, my b equals 12, and my c equals 20. And then I'm going to go ahead and draw my x. So 20 times 1 is 20, and 12 goes on the bottom. Now I'm going to find all my factors of 20. I know 1 and 20, 2 and 10, 3 won't go in there. 4 and 5. And now I'm at 5, so I know I'm done. So the only thing that adds together would be that 2 and that 10. So I'm going to put a 2 here and a 10 here. Now we're going to replace this b value with that 2 and that 10. And this one we're going to take right from the original problem because we didn't factor anything out. So I have x squared plus 2x plus 10x plus 20. Chunk these two, chunk those two. X squared plus 2x, the thing they have in common, I have an x in both of them. And 10x plus 20, they both have a 10 in common. I'm going to stick that x on the outside. So x squared divided by x, I'm just left with x. Plus 2x divided by x, I'm just left with a 2. Plus 10 goes on the outside. And then 10 divided by 10, or 10x divided by 10, I'm just left with a x. And 20 divided by 10, I'm left with a 2. So let's double check. How do our insides look? They look fantastic. So x plus 2. Okay, and then I'm going to look at my outside for my next set. So I have an x and a plus 10. So my next one is x plus 10. Now I go look back up. Was there anything that I took out, a greatest common factor that I took out at the top? Nope, there wasn't. So that's just going to be my final answer. I don't have to stick anything out front because there's nothing that I took out first. Okay, so number 7, 4x squared plus 24x plus 20. So we're first going to take a number out of each one of those. Well, when I look, I see that they're all even numbers. And because they're all even numbers, I could take a 2 out of there. But I want the greatest common factor, and I can go higher than 2. I know I could take a 4 out of a 4. I could take a 4 out of 24, and I also could take a 4 out of 20. So I'm going to find my greatest common factor, which is a 4 for this one. And then I have an x squared, an x, and then nothing. So there's no letter that I can take out. So I'm going to go ahead and put my 4 on the outside. 4x squared divided by 4 leaves me with an x squared, plus 24x divided by 4, that's going to leave me with a 6x, plus 20 divided by 4 is 5. So I'm going to take this and find my a, my b, and my c. So my a equals 1, my b equals 6, and my c equals 5. So 5 times 1 is 5, and then my 6 on the bottom. Well, my factors of 5 are only 1 and 5, so that has to be on either side, and those would add up to 6, so that works. So now I'm going to take this b value and replace it with those two. So I have x squared plus 1x plus 5x plus 5. And chunk those two, chunk those last two. X squared and 1x, they both have an x in them. And 5x and 5, they both have a 5 in them. So I'm going to put my x out front. X squared divided by x is x, and 1x divided by x is 1. Plus 5 goes out front. 5 divided by 5, or 5x divided by 5, it's going to leave me with an x, and then 5 divided by 5 is 1. So I'll do my insides match, x plus 1, x plus 1, that looks good. So my first set is going to be x plus 1, and my second set is what's on the outside. So I have an x plus 5. Okay, and I'm not quite done. I have to look up. Did I take a greatest common factor out at the beginning? So let's look. I have a 4 on the outside here, so yes, that greatest common factor has to come with me. So it's going to come all the way down here and stick out front. Last one. So I have 3x squared plus 5x plus 2. When I look at a 3, a 5, and a 2, the only number that would go into all three of those would be a 1. And if you divide each one of those by 1, you're going to come up with the same number. So we don't have to take a 1 out of there. So let's look at the letters. I have an x squared, an x, and just a 2. So all 3 of them do not have a letter in them. So this one we can just go right to our regular factoring by finding our a, our b, and our c. So my a equals 3, my b equals 5, and my c equals 2. I'm going to set up my x. 3 times 2 is 6, and my b is a 5. So I'm thinking of all my multiples of 6, or my factors of 6. 1 times 6, and 2 times 3. Well, the only thing that adds up to 5 is that 2 times 3, so I'm going to put a 2 here and a 3 here. And now I'm going to replace this b value with those 2 right there. So I'm going to start with 3x squared plus 2x plus 3x plus 2. And put parentheses around those ones. 3x squared and 2x, they both have an x in common. And 3x and 2, they both just have a 1 in common. Okay, so my x comes out front. So 3x squared divided by x leaves me with 3x. And then 2x divided by x leaves me with a 2 plus 1. And 3x divided by 1 leaves me with a 3x. And 2 divided by 1 leaves me with a 2. Double check. How do things look? 3x plus 2, 3x plus 2. That looks great. Okay, and then my outsides, x plus 1. Okay, and then I'm going to look to go back up to the top. Did we take a greatest common factor out? Nope, we didn't, so that can just be our final answer. We don't have to stick anything out front. You are set to work on Unit 3, LT 5 homework. Please reach out if you have questions.